Hospital cleaner exposes fiancé's plan to harm millionaire fiancé. Full of drama and surprises. Before we delve into this captivating narrative, please consider liking this story, subscribing for more profound tales, and sharing your initial thoughts in the comments. The morning sun, a gilded disk, ascended over Chicago, Illinois, as Julian Vance, at 35, emerged from his penthouse elevator in Gold Coast. He possessed everything a man could desire. His enterprise, Vance Innovations, was valued at many $100 million, and he was poised to wed the exquisite Isabelle Dubois. Life, he mused, could not be more perfect. "Good morning, Mr. Vance," murmured Alara, the cleaning attendant, as her cart glided past. He barely acknowledged her presence, his gaze fixated on his phone, scrolling through quantum algorithm analyses. "Big day approaching, sir?" she inquired with a gentle smile. "The grandest," he replied, still without looking up, "marrying this Saturday." In his expansive office, Julian's brother, Damien Vance, awaited, a formidable stack of documents resting on the polished mahogany. "Little brother, we must address the company merger before your nuptials." "Can it not wait, Damien? I am preoccupied with wedding arrangements." Damien's countenance darkened. "You know, if your focus remained more on business and less on that socialite fiancé of yours, perhaps the Federal Regulatory Commission would not harbor such unease." "What is that supposed to imply?" Julian snapped, his voice sharp. "It implies Isabelle Dubois cares more for her portrait in Society Whispers Gazette than for being your wife. Everyone perceives it save for you." Julian slammed his hand upon the desk, the sound echoing through the room. "You are merely envious because your own marriage faltered. Fine, remain deaf to my counsel, but when everything crumbles, do not claim I failed to warn you." At the grand wedding venue, Isabelle, with military precision, directed the decorators. "No, no, no, I specified ivory lilies, not pearl. This shall be the social event of the year, every detail must be flawless." Her assistant, Amelia, rushed forward, phone in hand. "Ms. Dubois, Society Whispers Gazette wishes to ascertain the designer of your gown." Isabelle's eyes gleamed with delight. "Inform them it is a bespoke gown from a celebrated atelier. Ensure they emphasize the opulent cost." She then turned to her friend, Charlotte. "Can you fathom it? In 3 days, I shall be Mrs. Julian Vance. Do you comprehend the significance? That you are uniting with the man you cherish?" Charlotte inquired, a hint of skepticism in her tone. Isabelle's laughter, sharp and dismissive, sliced through the air. "It signifies I shall never again fret over financial matters. Furthermore, being espoused to one of Chicago's most coveted bachelors will undeniably elevate my social media presence." Back in his office, Julian gazed at a photograph of himself and Isabelle. A disquieting sensation gnawed at him. The merger documents his brother had delivered lay unopened on his desk. His phone vibrated with yet another message from Isabelle concerning wedding minutiae. "Mr. Vance," it was Alara again, quietly approaching to empty his waste bin. "Sometimes, when my heart is troubled, I find solace in a drive, to clear the mind, you know." This time, Julian truly looked at her, her eyes held a profound kindness. "Perhaps you are correct," he conceded, grasping his car keys. The winding coastal road had always served as his sanctuary for contemplation. As his custom vehicle glided along, questions spiraled within his mind. Was he making a grave error? Did Isabelle truly love him? What cryptic warning had his brother sought to impart? He was so engrossed in his thoughts that he did not perceive the small fox until it was too late. Swerving abruptly to avoid the creature, his car spun violently out of control. The final sounds he registered were the shriek of tires and the sickening crunch of metal. At Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Lena Petrov commenced her evening shift as a cleaning attendant. She was accustomed to the panoply of drama that unfolded within these hallowed halls, but nothing had prepared her for the pandemonium that erupted when they admitted the unconscious millionaire, who was destined to marry in 3 days. To the intensive care unit, physicians bellowed as they surged past her. Hours later, when a semblance of quietude had settled, Lena stood in the doorway of room 507. The formidable Julian Vance lay still and silent, myriad machines emitting their steady, rhythmic beeps around him. She observed as his glamorous fiancée, Isabel, came and went, seemingly more captivated by posing for the throngs of photographers outside than by merely sitting at his bedside. "Do not fret," Lena whispered as she meticulously cleaned his room that night, "someone will remain here with you, even if it is merely the cleaning attendant." She possessed no prescience that those simple syllables would irrevocably alter both their existences, or that sometimes, the grandest love stories commence in the most improbable of locales. The seemingly flawless life Julian Vance had meticulously constructed was on the precipice of ruin, yet from those very fragments, something infinitely more precious would blossom, something genuine. The news of Julian Vance's tragic accident reverberated through Chicago like an uncontained wildfire. At Northwestern Memorial Hospital, the press maintained a relentless vigil day and night, fervently hoping to capture a fleeting glimpse of the millionaire's illustrious visitors. Isabelle Dubois ensured her arrival coincided with peak hours, when the greatest number of photographers were present. "Oh, darling," she would exclaim dramatically, deftly touching up her lipstick before entering his room, "what shall become of our impending nuptials?" Yet, Lena Petrov, who diligently cleaned the ICU rooms each night, witnessed a divergent narrative unfold. She observed how Isabel dedicated more time to striking poses for the cameras than to quietly sitting with Julian, how she never initiated physical contact save for the moments when camera shutters clicked incessantly. "Your brother was here again today," Lena softly informed the unconscious Julian one night as she mopped the sterile floor. "He was accompanied by a gentleman I had not previously encountered. They were conversing about company shares." The man had been Victor Thorne, Julian's most formidable business adversary. What Lena remained unaware of was that Damien Vance was clandestinely orchestrating a scheme to seize dominion over his brother's company. "Merely affix your signature here," Damien instructed the board members, his tone reassuring. "It is a temporary measure until Julian recuperates, someone must oversee operations." However, in clandestine meetings with Victor Thorne, Damien's true machinations surfaced. "Once I wield absolute control," he vowed, a malevolent glint in his eyes, "we can merge our enterprises. Julian will awaken to discover he has forfeited everything." Back at the hospital, Lena began to allocate more time to room 507 during her brief respites. She would read aloud to Julian from volumes on celestial bodies and the vastness of the cosmos, borrowed meticulously from the library. "My grandmother always imparted that individuals in comas possess the faculty of hearing," she confessed to him, her voice gentle, "so I surmised you might appreciate some companionship." One day, she inadvertently overheard Isabel embroiled in a vehement argument on her phone in the hallway. "I cannot sustain this charade much longer," Isabel was vociferating, "the press is commencing to pose probing inquiries concerning the wedding. No, I am entirely unconcerned with his medical condition, my sole preoccupation is my public image." Lena's heart ached for Julian that night as she read to him from a well-worn book about the distant stars. She spoke in hushed tones, "You know, Mr. Vance, sometimes those closest to us wear elaborate masks. It is the strangers who unveil their authentic countenances." Days transmuted into weeks. Lena observed how the stream of visitors gradually dwindled. Even Isabel's camera-ready appearances became notably less frequent. "I am obligated to attend a charity gala," she would explain to the nurses, a feigned sigh escaping her lips. "I am certain Julian would desire me to uphold our social obligations." But Lena remained a constant presence. Each night, she would meticulously clean his room and engage him in quiet discourse. She recounted vignettes of her life, how she was diligently pursuing her nursing education, how she had undertaken this cleaning position to help defray her mother's medical expenses. "I am aware you likely cannot discern my words," she murmured one night, "but everyone requires someone to converse with, even if they slumber." What she failed to notice was how Julian's finger would sometimes give the slightest twitch when she spoke, how his heart rate would stabilize when her gentle voice filled the room. Meanwhile, Damien's intricate stratagem was unfolding flawlessly. He had already effectuated the transfer of majority control of several pivotal subsidiaries into his own name. The merger with Victor Thorne's enterprise was on the cusp of completion. Soon, he boasted to Thorne over expensive amber liquid, "My younger brother's empire shall be utterly fragmented." But he had not accounted for Beatrice, a venerable secretary who had been in the employ of the Vance family for 25 years. She had perceived the dubious paperwork and had commenced making meticulous copies. "Something is profoundly amiss," Beatrice confided to Lena one day, during a visit to Julian's bedside. "The company is being meticulously dismembered, piece by agonizing piece." Lena felt a profound sense of helplessness. "What recourse do I possess? I am merely a cleaning attendant." Sometimes, Beatrice wisely imparted, being unseen affords one the ability to perceive everything. That night, Lena made a resolute decision. As she cleaned Julian's room, she commenced recounting every detail: his brother's clandestine visits, Isabel's true character, Beatrice's mounting suspicions. "I am aware this is not my place," she confessed, gently clasping his inert hand, "but you must be apprised of the truth. You must awaken before it is irrevocably too late." And then, something transpired that altered the very fabric of their burgeoning connection. As she turned to depart, she felt it, the faintest pressure, a minute squeeze of her hand. Lena froze, her breath catching in her throat. "Mr. Vance." His eyelids fluttered, a fragile, hesitant movement. She hastened to summon the nurse, her heart thumping a frantic rhythm against her ribs. As the medical team surged into the room, she stood in the doorway, witnessing as Julian Vance embarked upon his arduous journey back to consciousness. But the world he would awaken to was profoundly different from the one he had departed, and the woman who would assist him in reassembling its shattered fragments was not his glamorous fiancée. It was the quiet cleaning attendant who had steadfastly kept him company through the encroaching darkness. The masks were on the verge of slipping, and nothing would ever again be the same. If this unfolding saga has gripped your imagination, a simple comment or share would mean the world. The physicians unequivocally declared it a miraculous recovery. After 3 months in a profound coma, Julian Vance opened his eyes to a world he scarcely recognized. The initial face he beheld was not Isabel's, but Lena's, as she quietly and diligently cleaned his room during the nocturnal shift. "Water," he whispered, his voice hoarse from disuse. Lena started, startled to hear him speak, and quickly aided him in sipping water through a thin straw. "I shall summon the physician," she announced, turning to depart. "Wait," Julian called out, his voice weak but clear. "Your voice. I recognize your voice." Lena froze, her heart pounding. "Pieces. Stories, the distant stars." His eyes struggled to focus upon her face. "You were here, every night." Before Lena could formulate a response, the room became a flurry of medical personnel. She slipped out quietly, her heart still racing. In the hallway, she retrieved her phone to contact Beatrice. "He is awake," she uttered, her voice barely a whisper, "we must act with alacrity." Within mere hours, the hospital was teeming with reporters. Damien Vance arrived first, his countenance a carefully constructed mask of brotherly solicitude. "Thank the heavens you are alive," he intoned, gripping Julian's hand with excessive force. "Do not concern yourself with any matters, I have been diligently attending to business." Isabel burst in next, flawlessly made up despite the early hour. "Darling," she cried dramatically, camera flashes illuminating her entry, "I have been utterly adrift without you." But Julian's eyes persistently drifted toward the doorway, searching for the cleaning attendant with the familiar, anchoring voice. "Where is Lena?" he inquired during a rare moment of quietude. "Who?" Isabel frowned, a dismissive wave of her hand. "The cleaning attendant. She was present every night." Isabel scoffed, her laugh brittle. "Darling, you must be disoriented. Why would a cleaning attendant hold any significance? But Julian was not disoriented. During his profound coma, Lena's voice had been his sole anchor. He recalled her words, her stories, her subtle warnings concerning his brother and Isabel. That night, after all visitors had departed, Lena returned to clean his room. "They are proclaiming you will achieve a full recovery," she stated, maintaining a respectful distance. "Tell me everything," Julian urged, his voice firm, "everything you observed while I was asleep." So Lena recounted everything. Damien's clandestine meetings with Victor Thorne, Isabel's incessant phone calls and meticulously staged camera-ready visits, Beatrice's startling discovery of dubious documents. "Your brother has been systematically transferring company assets," she explained, her voice hushed. "Beatrice has been meticulously gathering irrefutable proof." Julian's face hardened, a cold anger settling in his eyes. "And Isabel?" Lena hesitated, her gaze dropping. "She was more concerned with photo opportunities than with truly visiting you." "I am sorry." Julian closed his eyes, a flicker of pain momentarily crossing his features. "Do not be sorry. While everyone else wore masks, you were the sole one who spoke the truth to me." The ensuing day, Julian requested an audience with his lawyer. Though still physically weak, his mind remained remarkably sharp. "I demand a comprehensive audit of all company transactions made during my coma," he ordered, his voice unwavering. "And procure for me every document Damien has affixed his signature to." When Damien subsequently visited, Julian feigned grogginess and confusion. "The physicians assert that memory loss is a normal sequela after a coma," he remarked innocently, observing his brother's palpable relief. "Do not concern yourself with anything," Damien assured him, a smug smile playing on his lips, "everything is under control." But that night, Julian had Lena surreptitiously bring Beatrice into his room with copies of all the documents she had assiduously gathered. "They presumed no one was observing," Beatrice declared, spreading the incriminating papers across his bed, "but I have been in the employ of your father's company for 25 years. I am privy to every stratagem." The evidence was damning. Damien had systematically transferred control of pivotal subsidiaries, meticulously preparing for a merger that would have rendered Julian utterly destitute. "Your brother is meeting Thorne tomorrow night at the Peninsula Chicago," Lena added, her voice quiet. Beatrice overheard them planning to finalize the deal. Julian reached for Lena's hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "Why are you assisting me?" "Because," she stated simply, her gaze meeting his, "during those 3 months, I came to know the authentic you. Not the millionaire, not the CEO, simply you." Their eyes met, and an electric current passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of a burgeoning connection. But before either could utter another word, Isabel burst into the room. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her eyes narrowing at their joined hands. "Why are you holding hands with the cleaning attendant?" Lena swiftly withdrew her hand, but Julian held firm. "She is the one who exposed your deceit, Isabel. All those instances you came here merely for photographs, all the while conspiring with my brother." Isabel's flawlessly made-up face crumpled, her composure dissolving. "You do not comprehend. Damien promised me a share of everything once he seized control. We were destined to be together." The unvarnished truth struck Julian with the force of a physical blow. If this unfolding saga has gripped your imagination, a simple comment or share would mean the world. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more chapters of truth. His fiancée and his brother, the two individuals he had placed his utmost trust in. "Depart," he commanded quietly, his voice laced with venom. "Depart before I summon security." After Isabel fled in a torrent of tears, Lena began to leave as well. "I should go." "Stay," Julian pleaded, his voice raw. "Please. I require someone I can trust." As Lena settled onto the chair beside his bed, neither of them knew they were on the cusp of embarking upon the battle of their very lives. Damien would not relinquish his ambitions easily, and somewhere in Chicago, Victor Thorne was preparing to pilfer everything Julian had meticulously built. But for the first time since awakening, Julian felt a surge of strength, for now he knew who his true allies were. As the plot thickens, we invite you to like this story, subscribe to our channel, and share your predictions in the comments. Your support keeps these tales alive. And sometimes, the most potent weapon is not money or influence, it is having someone who believes in the truth. The opulent restaurant at the Peninsula Chicago buzzed with hushed conversation as Damian Vance and Victor Thorne occupied a private booth, champagne glasses raised in triumphant celebration. By this time tomorrow, Damian smirked, a cruel satisfaction in his eyes. Vance's innovations will be ours. My little brother will not comprehend what struck him. But at that precise moment, Julian Vance, in his hospital room, was far from helpless. He had assembled an unlikely, yet formidable, team, Beatrice with her formidable stack of evidence, Lena with her meticulously detailed observations, and Arthur Finch, his most trusted legal counsel. Your brother grew careless, Arthur stated, meticulously reviewing the damning documents. He presumed no one was paying heed, but these transfers will not withstand scrutiny in court. I do not wish to await court proceedings, Julian replied, his voice now imbued with a renewed strength. I desire to halt them tonight. Lena, who had just concluded her shift, spoke up from her chair beside his bed. The meeting at the Peninsula Chicago. If we apprehend them in the act. Precisely, Julian affirmed, attempting to sit straighter, wincing slightly at the effort. But I am still too frail to attend myself. Perhaps you need not, Beatrice mused thoughtfully. Sometimes, the most effective maneuvers are those no one foresees. An hour later, Lena entered the Peninsula Chicago, clad in a borrowed waitress uniform. Beatrice had called in a favor with her cousin, who was employed there. In her apron pocket, Lena carried a diminutive recorder. Remember, Julian had impressed upon her, squeezing her hand reassuringly, you are not obligated to undertake this. I desire to, she had replied, her voice firm, they must pay for their transgressions against you. Now, as she approached Damian's table with a fresh bottle of champagne, her heart hammered a frantic rhythm. She could distinctly hear their conversation as she feigned struggling with the cork. Once these documents are signed, Thorne was declaring, his voice laced with triumph, we shall possess controlling interest. Julian will be nothing more than a figurehead. Poor little brother, Damian chuckled, a cold, derisive sound, still reclining in that hospital bed, trusting his elder brother to oversee everything. Lena's hands trembled with suppressed fury as she finally popped the cork. As she poured, she deliberately spilled some champagne onto Damian's sleeve. You imbecile! He snapped, his face contorted in a sneer. This suit costs more than your annual earnings. I am profoundly sorry, sir, Lena apologized, dabbing at his jacket with a napkin, meticulously ensuring the recorder captured every syllable. Permit me to fetch something to cleanse that. Back in the hospital, Julian was engaged in a series of phone calls with the board members. One by one, he contacted each of them, subtly planting seeds of doubt concerning Damian's actions. Scrutinize the transfer records, he instructed them, his voice calm but firm. Pose questions. Examine meticulously where the funds are truly being directed. Isabel chose that precise moment to slink into his room. She had exchanged her customary designer gown for a simple black outfit, her face devoid of makeup. I can elucidate everything, she began, her voice a timid whisper. Can you? Julian's voice was as cold as Arctic ice. Can you explain why my fiancé was conspiring with my brother to pilfer my company? I never intended to fall in love with him, Isabel whispered, her voice barely audible. It merely transpired, and then he promised me everything, the money, the social standing, the power. Depart. Julian's words cut like a sharpened blade. You and my brother deserve one another. As Isabel fled, sobbing uncontrollably, Lena returned with the damning recording. Her hands trembled as she played it back. Damian and Thorne's voices filled the room, meticulously laying bare their entire nefarious scheme. "Transmit copies to every single board member," Julian commanded Arthur. "I desire them to hear precisely the caliber of man they have been implicitly trusting." But Damien possessed one final, insidious card to play. Storming into Julian's hospital room the ensuing morning, he brandished a stack of papers. "Sign these," he demanded, his voice guttural. "Relinquish your voting rights, or I shall ensure everyone becomes privy to your little romance with the cleaning attendant." Lena, who had been quietly changing Julian's water pitcher, froze, her breath caught in her throat. "You would truly stoop to such depths?" Julian inquired quietly, his gaze steady. "The press would revel in it," Damien sneered, a malevolent glint in his eyes. "Millionaire loses his faculties after coma, falls for lowly cleaning woman. Your reputation would be irrevocably shattered." Julian looked at Lena, then back at his brother, a newfound resolve hardening his features. "You know what, Damien? Proceed. Inform everyone. Because I would rather forfeit my reputation than forfeit my soul, as you have done." Damien's face purpled with incandescent rage. He roughly seized Lena's arm. "This is your fault, you gold-digging little," but he never completed the sentence. For Julian Vance, still weakened from his coma, somehow mustered the prodigious strength to propel himself from his bed and deliver a forceful punch square to his brother's jaw. As Damien sprawled ignominiously on the floor, security guards surged into the room. Behind them came Arthur Finch, holding the incriminating recorded evidence from the hotel. "Mr. Vance," one of the guards stated to Damien, his voice firm, "you will have to accompany us. The board desires an immediate audience with you." As they led Damien away, Lena gently assisted Julian back into his bed. His hands trembled from the exertion, but his eyes were clear, a profound light shining within them. "I meant what I uttered," he told her softly. "I do not care what anyone else opines. You are the sole authentic thing in my life right now." Lena gazed down at their joined hands, his expensive, meticulously manicured ones, and her work-roughened ones. "What transpires now?" "Now." Julian smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. "Now we fight back. Together." Outside the hospital windows, the sun was ascending over Chicago, Illinois. A new day was dawning, one that would irrevocably transform everything for the cleaning attendant who dared to care, and the millionaire who learned that true wealth is not enumerated in dollars, but in something far more profound. Yet, Damien Vance was not finished, and somewhere in the sprawling city, wheels were already turning that would test their newfound bond in ways they could never possibly fathom. Damien Vance sat in his luxurious apartment, nursing both his bruised jaw and his wounded pride. His phone buzzed incessantly with another message from the board of directors, his third official warning. But he was no longer perusing them. Instead, his gaze was fixed upon an old photograph of his father, Frederick Vance. "You always favored Julian more," he muttered, pouring another drink into his glass. "Well, just observe what unfolds next." Across town, Julian was finally being discharged from the hospital. Lena helped him meticulously pack the few personal belongings he had accumulated during his stay, including all the books she had read aloud to him. "You are not obligated to keep those," she said, a flush of embarrassment coloring her cheeks at their worn library covers. "They are profoundly significant to me," Julian replied softly, his voice gentle. "They serve as a poignant reminder of who was truly present when I desperately needed someone." But their quiet, intimate moment was abruptly interrupted by a surging wave of reporters outside the hospital entrance. Headlines concerning the Vance family scandal had exploded across every newspaper and gossip site. "Vance heir awakens to betrayal." "Millionaire's brother caught in takeover scheme." "Society bride abandons coma victim for his brother." And now, a new headline was rapidly gaining traction: "Millionaire and the Cleaning Lady, a Hospital Romance." "Do not look at them," Julian urged, perceiving Lena's discomfort as cameras flashed incessantly. "They are irrelevant." But other matters held profound relevance. like the anonymous letter Lena discovered in her locker that morning, gold diggers receive their just deserts. Or the subtle whispers that had commenced among some of the other hospital staff behind her back. Even her supervisor had summoned her for a friendly chat concerning the maintenance of professional boundaries with patients. Perhaps I should resign, Lena confided to Beatrice during their lunch break. Find employment at another hospital. That is precisely their objective, Beatrice replied firmly, her gaze steady. Since when do you flee from bullies? Meanwhile, Julian confronted his own arduous battles. His inaugural day back at the office was a treacherous minefield of feigned smiles and concealed agendas. Not everyone harbored contentment concerning Damien's removal from the board. Your brother possessed some commendable concepts regarding modernization, one board member remarked, a hint of accusation in his tone. Perhaps you are acting with undue haste. My brother possessed concepts regarding larceny, Julian corrected coldly, his voice devoid of emotion. Anyone who supported him might wish to re-evaluate their position. But Damien was far from finished with his insidious plotting. In a dimly lit bar downtown, he met with a private investigator. I desire every conceivable detail concerning her, he ordered, sliding Lena's photograph across the table. Every secret, every weakness, every individual she holds dear. The investigator nodded, a silent acknowledgement. What about the other matter? Damien's smile was cruel, devoid of warmth. Yes, ensure those financial records are precisely where the Federal Regulatory Commission will discover them. My brother is about to learn the profound sensation of forfeiting everything. Back at his opulent penthouse, Julian was meticulously scrutinizing years of company records with Arthur Finch. The lawyer's face was grim, etched with concern. Damien did not merely assail the company, Arthur explained, his voice low. He meticulously planted something far more insidious, false records, meticulously modified documents. If the Federal Regulatory Commission uncovers them, I could face incarceration, Julian finished quietly, his voice hollow. Lena arrived after her shift to discover him surrounded by mountains of papers, his face drawn with profound worry. Without uttering a single word, she commenced preparing coffee, falling seamlessly into the comfortable routine they had developed during his hospital stay. You are not obligated to remain, Julian stated, his gaze fixed on her. This could become exceedingly unpleasant. Lena gently placed his coffee down on the table. Do you recall what you read in the book on celestial bodies about what renders something truly special? It is the time one devotes to it, Julian quoted softly, a faint smile touching his lips. I have devoted an immeasurable amount of time caring about you to simply walk away now, she declared simply, her eyes meeting his. But life, in its infinite unpredictability, harbored other plans. That night, Lena received an urgent, frantic call from her mother's nursing home. The monthly payment had inexplicably bounced, all her accounts were suddenly, inexplicably frozen. When she frantically contacted the bank, the explanation was cold and stark. There is an ongoing investigation into suspicious deposits, possible involvement in financial fraud. Lena felt a wave of nausea wash over her. Damien was assailing her too, meticulously contriving circumstances to make it appear as though she had been compensated to spy on Julian. Across town, Isabel was granting an exclusive interview. I endeavored to warn everyone about that cleaning woman, she declared, dabbing her eyes with a delicate handkerchief, the insidious manner in which she manipulated poor Julian while he was vulnerable. And in his office, Damien raised a solitary toast to his computer screen, observing with grim satisfaction as his meticulous plans unfolded. He had learned from his prior missteps. This time, he would utterly annihilate his brother, not by assailing his financial assets, but by assailing the very core of his heart. But he had not accounted for one critical detail. The security camera footage Beatrice had secretly recorded of him planting the false documents, nor the undeniable fact that Lena, despite her frozen accounts and irrevocably tarnished reputation, was not going anywhere. That night, as torrential rain lashed against the expansive penthouse windows, Lena and Julian sat together on his plush couch, both visibly battle-worn yet undefeated. We could flee, Lena suggested, a hint of jest in her voice, relocate to a quaint, secluded town, alter our names. Julian gently took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. I have spent my entire existence evading authentic emotions, concealing myself behind facades of wealth and social standing. No longer. So, what course of action do we pursue? We fight. But first, he pulled her closer. There is something I have yearned to do since I first opened my eyes and beheld you in that hospital room. As their lips met for the very first time, neither of them perceived Beatrice's urgent text messages, nor the breaking news alert concerning a shocking discovery within the Vance Company archives. The storm was far from abating, but at least now, they possessed something truly worth fighting for. Beatrice's urgent text messages finally pierced through the quiet of midnight. Turn on the news now. Julian and Lena broke from their profound kiss to find every television channel broadcasting the same astounding story. Old photographs filled the screen, images of Julian and Damien's father, Frederick Vance, with another family. Sources have confirmed that the late Frederick Vance maintained a secret second family, the reporter announced, her voice grave, including another son who may possess a legal claim to the Vance fortune. Julian sat frozen, his world tilting on its axis for the second time in as many months. That is impossible. But the undeniable evidence was emblazoned upon the screen, documents, photographs, and a man who bore a startling resemblance to his father. Leo Moreno, 40 years of age, a construction worker from Englewood. Did you know? Julian questioned Beatrice when she arrived at the penthouse, still clad in her pajamas. I discovered the files tonight, she explained, her voice hushed, concealed within your father's old office. But Damien reached the press first. Lena observed the profound pain etched upon Julian's face. Why would your brother expose this now? Because, Julian articulated grimly, if this Leo person possesses a legitimate claim, it could effectively freeze all company assets during a protracted legal battle. Everything would grind to an abrupt halt, including the ongoing investigation into Damien's false documents. Arthur Finch added, arriving with a formidable stack of legal papers, he is merely buying time. But Damien had once again gravely underestimated his brother. Instead of recoiling from the brewing scandal, Julian undertook an unexpected course of action, he traveled to Englewood. You are not obligated to accompany me, he informed Lena as they drove through the pre-dawn streets. I know, she replied simply, her hand resting gently on his arm. I desire to. They located Leo Moreno's apartment building just as he was departing for work. The resemblance to Frederick Vance was striking, almost uncanny. I mused when one of you would finally manifest, Leo stated, his expression unsurprised. Though I surmised it would be the brother who has been persistently calling me all week. Damien contacted you? Julian questioned, a flicker of disbelief in his eyes. He offered me 8 million crowns to publicly assert my rightful inheritance. Leo snorted, a dismissive sound. He neglected to mention he was truly manipulating me to sow discord with you. Inside Leo's modest apartment, over steaming coffee in chipped mugs, the unvarnished truth emerged. Yes, Leo affirmed, Frederick Vance did indeed have another family. Yes, I am his son. But I have known since I was 20, Leo explained, his voice calm. Your father confessed everything, established a trust fund for me. I never yearned for his wealth or his name. I had my own life, my own family. Then why come forward now? Because your brother located my daughter. Leo's face hardened, a fierce protectiveness in his eyes. She is gravely ill, requires exorbitant treatments. Damien vowed to obliterate her chances of receiving care if I did not acquiesce. Lena, who had remained silent until this moment, suddenly spoke up. Like he froze my bank accounts and threatened my mother's nursing home care. Understanding dawned upon Julian's face, a grim realization. He is utilizing the very individuals we cherish against us. The twists keep coming. If you're enjoying this journey, please like, subscribe, comment, and share to help us reach more readers who appreciate a good story. But Damien's meticulously crafted plan was on the verge of spectacular backfire, for now Julian possessed irrefutable proof of blackmail to append to Beatrice's meticulous security footage. Back at the penthouse, an emergency board meeting was convened. This time, every member attended, including some faces Julian had not beheld in years. Before we commence, Julian announced, his voice clear and resonant, "I would like you to meet someone." Leo Moreno walked in, followed closely by Lena and Beatrice. On the vast screen behind them, Damien's blackmail attempts played out, meticulously captured by Beatrice's careful recordings. "My brother believes family is a weakness," Julian continued, his gaze sweeping across the faces in the room, "something to exploit. But true family, blood or chosen, is our greatest strength." One by one, the truth, stark and unyielding, emerged: Damien's intricate schemes, the falsified Federal Regulatory Commission documents, the insidious attacks on Lena's and Leo's families. "I move for an immediate vote," the senior board member declared, his voice firm, "to remove Damien Vance from all company positions and freeze his assets pending criminal investigation." The vote was unanimous. But in his apartment across town, Damien observed the news coverage with a strange, enigmatic smile. He retrieved his phone and dialed. "It is time," he stated to the individual on the other end, "release everything we possess concerning the cleaning lady, and make that call to the nursing home." Lena's phone rang mere minutes later. Her mother, Clara, had suffered a fall. The nurse's voice was grave, it was serious. As she and Julian rushed to the hospital, neither noticed the man trailing their car, nor the curious fact that every traffic light they encountered turned red, delaying them just long enough. For while they were racing across town, something was transpiring at Vance Innovations, something that would render the secret family scandal appear utterly trivial. And in a private airport hangar, Victor Thorne boarded his private jet, clutching a USB drive containing enough data to obliterate not just the company, but every individual Julian held dear. The true war was just commencing, and this time, the casualties would not be measured in dollars and cents, but in the precious lives of innocent individuals caught in the burgeoning crossfire. As Lena held Julian's hand during the drive, she remembered something her mother had once imparted. Love is akin to a lighthouse in a storm. The larger the waves, the more brilliantly it shines. They were about to ascertain precisely how brilliantly their light could radiate, and whether it would suffice to guide them through the profound darkness that lay ahead. The emergency room at Mercy Hospital and Medical Center was a maelstrom of chaos when Lena and Julian arrived. They discovered Lena's mother, Clara Petrov, already undergoing surgery for a fractured hip. "She was perfectly fine this morning," Lena insisted to the bewildered nurse. How could she possibly have fallen? But deep within her heart, she knew this bore Damien's indelible mark. Julian's phone buzzed incessantly with urgent messages from the office, which he steadfastly ignored to remain by Lena's side. Finally, Arthur Finch's call could no longer be postponed. "The entire system is down," Arthur reported, his voice strained. "Every computer in the building went dark 10 minutes ago. And there is more." Lena observed Julian's face grow pale as he listened, his grip tightening on the phone. When he concluded the call, his hands were trembling perceptibly. Damien did not merely assail the company computers, he explained, his voice a low growl. "He unearthed something in my father's old files, something that could utterly annihilate everything. What could be worse than a secret family?" Lena whispered, her voice barely audible. "A secret deal." Julian ran his hands through his hair, his brow furrowed with deep concern. 25 years ago, my father supposedly stole the core technology that formed the very foundation of Vance Innovations. If that proof surfaces, all those jobs," Lena whispered, her eyes wide with realization, "all those people dependent upon the company." The nurse interrupted with an update on Clara. The surgery had been successful, but something was profoundly amiss with her medical records. Her insurance was suddenly displayed as expired. That is impossible. Lena protested vehemently. I just made the payment. But she had not, she could not with her accounts inexplicably frozen. I shall handle it, Julian declared immediately, reaching for his wallet. No. Lena stopped him, her hand firmly on his arm. Damien is attempting to portray me as someone who is merely exploiting you for financial gain. I will not afford him that satisfaction. Then what course of action do we pursue? A new voice answered from the doorway, strong and resolute. We fight back. Together. It was Leo Moreno, still clad in his construction uniform. Behind him stood Beatrice, carrying a stack of formidable folders. Those files Damien unearthed, Beatrice stated, her voice calm, there is something he overlooked. Meanwhile, across town, Damien Vance was celebrating his perceived victory with Victor Thorne in a private club. A toast. Thorne raised his glass, a malevolent smirk on his lips, to the demise of the formidable Julian Vance. But Damien's smile faltered abruptly when his phone buzzed with an incoming message, a video link. When he clicked it, his blood ran cold. There, on the screen, was his father, Frederick Vance, 25 years younger, seated at his desk and recording a message. If you are viewing this, the recorded Frederick began, his voice surprisingly clear, then someone has discovered the false evidence I meticulously planted about stealing technology. A safeguard, should either of my sons ever attempt to exploit the company for their own avarice rather than for the collective good of others. Damien slammed his phone down onto the table, but not before Thorne caught a glimpse of the screen. What was that? Thorne demanded, his eyes narrowed. Nothing. Damien snapped, but his hands trembled perceptibly as he frantically texted his contact at the nursing home. Is it done? The reply was not what he anticipated. Police here asking questions about suspicious activity. For while Damien had been singularly focused on Lena's mother, he had overlooked the intricate network of individuals Lena had selflessly assisted during her years at the hospital, like Detective Ben Carter, whose mother she had cared for in the ICU. Detective Carter, who now possessed a very interesting security tape showing a man tampering with Clara Petrov's walker just moments before her fall. Back at Mercy Hospital and Medical Center, Lena's phone lit up with a torrent of messages of support, hospital staff she had worked with for years, patients she had helped, families who remembered her profound kindness, all offering assistance with her mother's care. I do not comprehend, she confided to Julian, her voice laced with confusion. After everything Damien did to irrevocably tarnish my reputation. He does not comprehend that true power is not about money or control, Julian replied, his gaze unwavering. It is about the lives you touch. Beatrice burst in, her tablet clutched in her hand, with breaking news. The stolen technology story was being meticulously ripped apart by tech journalists who had unearthed Frederick Vance's old patents. The truth was inexorably emerging. But Damien possessed one final, devastating card to play. In his private safe, he harbored something even his father had remained unaware of, something that would compel Julian to choose between saving the company and saving Lena. At Vance Innovations, the computers suddenly flickered back online. But instead of the usual screens, every monitor displayed the same chilling image, a young Lena Petrov in a police station, being fingerprinted 12 years ago. Damien's voice, amplified and distorted, resonated through the speakers. Our little cleaning lady was arrested. Would you care to know why, brother? Julian looked at Lena, whose face had gone stark white. He found it, she whispered, her voice trembling, the one thing I never confided to you. The reason I had to care for my mother. The reason I became a cleaning lady instead of completing nursing school. Outside the hospital room, thunder cracked ominously across the sky. A storm was breaking over Chicago, Illinois. But the true tempest was just commencing, for Lena's secret was not what Damien believed it to be, and when the unvarnished truth finally emerged, it would not merely alter her relationship with Julian, it would irrevocably shake the very foundations of the Vance family itself. As rain lashed against the windows, Lena took a deep, fortifying breath. It was time to recount the story she had kept concealed for 12 arduous years, a narrative that began with another hospital, another affluent family, and a choice that had haunted her ever since. "Your father," she stated quietly to Julian, her voice barely a whisper, "I encountered him once, the night everything profoundly changed." Lightning flashed, momentarily illuminating the tears that glistened in her eyes. The past was on the verge of a cataclysmic collision with the present, and nothing would ever again be the same. Lena's hands trembled perceptibly as she extracted an old locket from beneath her uniform. Inside was a faded photograph of a younger Frederick Vance standing alongside a nurse, Lena's mother, Clara. 25 years ago, my mother was a nurse at Rush University Medical Center, Lena began, her voice a fragile thread. Your father was her patient after his initial heart attack, the one no one was privy to. Julian sank heavily onto a nearby chair, a look of profound disbelief on his face. Father never suffered a heart attack. He kept it a profound secret, claiming it would detrimentally impact the company if people perceived him as weak. Lena's voice was barely a whisper. He remained there for 3 weeks. My mother meticulously cared for him. They grew close. Understanding dawned upon Leo Moreno's face, a flicker of recognition. Like my mother. No, Lena shook her head gently, nothing romantic transpired. But he witnessed the arduousness of my mother's work, how she struggled desperately to finance my nursing school education. He established a private account to assist us. Beatrice produced an old file from her folder. That is why I recognized your name. There were payments to a Clara Petrov for years. But the arrest? Julian pressed gently, his voice urgent. Damien stated. 12 years ago, Lena continued, her voice gaining a slight tremor, your father experienced another heart attack, a particularly severe one. He managed to contact my mother, she was the sole one who knew about his condition. Lena's eyes brimmed with tears, the memory still raw. She transported him to the hospital just in time, but the physicians declared he required emergency surgery. They needed next of kin to affix their signature to the papers. But Damien and I were out of the country, Julian remembered, a dawning horror in his eyes, a business trip to Kyoto. Mother forged Damien's signature on the consent forms. She understood every minute was critical. Lena's voice broke, choked with emotion. She saved your father's life. But when Damien discovered her actions, he had her arrested. For forgery, Julian finished, fury building in his voice. Your father attempted to intervene, but he was too weak after the surgery. By the time he recovered, the damage was irreversible. Mother lost her nursing license. I was forced to withdraw from nursing school to support us. Lena wiped a solitary tear from her cheek. That is why I became a cleaning attendant. But why did father not rectify it afterward? Julian questioned, bewildered. He attempted to. He established a trust fund for us, ensured we were meticulously cared for. But 4 days before he intended to reinstate mother's license. Lena could not bring herself to finish the sentence. He died, Beatrice stated softly, her voice compassionate, and Damien ensured all records of his promises vanished without a trace. Suddenly, a slow, derisive clapping filled the hospital room. Damien stood in the doorway, his face twisted in a malevolent sneer. What a touching narrative, he sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm, the noble cleaning lady who sacrificed everything. But you omitted one crucial detail, did you not, Lena? About what else transpired that night? Lena's face went pale, her eyes widening in horror. Don't. The night our father experienced his second heart attack, Damien continued cruelly, his voice low and menacing, he altered his will. I discovered the draft in his papers. He was going to bequeath controlling interest in the company to a foundation administered by Clara Petrov's daughter. The room fell into stunned silence. Julian stared at Lena in profound shock. That is why you grew close to my brother, isn't it? Damien pressed, his voice laced with venom, attempting to claim what you believe is rightfully yours. No. Lena stood up, trembling, her voice imbued with a desperate urgency. I never knew about the will. I cared for Julian because he desperately needed someone, because I. She halted, her gaze falling upon Julian's stunned, unreadable face. Because you what? Damien mocked, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Love him? Please. You are merely like everyone else, attempting to seize a piece of the Vance fortune. That is sufficient. The new voice resonated from the doorway. Everyone turned to behold an elderly gentleman in an exquisitely tailored suit. Justice Alastair Thorne, head of the Vance Company board. I received your message, Beatrice, he stated, holding up his phone, and I believe it is time everyone knew the truth concerning that night. Damien's smirk faltered, his composure visibly cracking. What are you pontificating about? I was there, the justice stated quietly, his voice firm. I was the one who drove Frederick to the hospital when he called Clara. I was his dearest friend, and I was privy to all his profound secrets. He turned to Julian. Including why he truly desired Lena to administer the foundation. From his worn leather briefcase, Justice Thorne extracted a sealed envelope. Your father entrusted me with this, to be opened solely if his children ever turned against one another. I would assert that time has arrived. With trembling hands, Julian opened the letter and commenced reading his father's final, poignant words. My dearest sons, if you are reading this, then my gravest fear has tragically materialized. You have permitted avarice and power to turn you against one another. I endeavored to teach you that a company transcends mere profits, it is profoundly about the lives we touch. Lena Petrov comprehended that, even as a young girl visiting her mother at the hospital. She exhibited profound kindness to me without knowing my identity. That is why I desired her to guide the company's future. Not because of who she was, but because of who she intrinsically is. Julian looked up at Lena, perceiving her through newly opened eyes. All those nights she had spent reading to him in the hospital, caring for him without desiring anything in return. She was living his father's enduring legacy without even being aware of it. This is utterly ridiculous. Damien sputtered, his face contorted in disbelief. You cannot seriously believe. But he was abruptly interrupted by a commotion emanating from the hallway. Police officers were leading away the man who had tampered with Clara's walker, and he was speaking. Mr. Vance paid me, he was vociferating, him and Mr. Thorne. They desired to harm the old lady to get to her daughter. Damien instinctively backed away, but security guards blocked his exit. His phone buzzed, Victor Thorne was being apprehended at the airport. Everything was rapidly unraveling. But for Lena and Julian, things were finally achieving a profound clarity. I never yearned for the company, Lena stated softly, her voice gentle. I simply desired to assist people, as my mother imparted to me, as your father believed I could. Julian took her hand, understanding at last why he had felt so profoundly drawn to her from the very outset. In a world of masks and deceit, she had been unequivocally real. But Damien was not finished, and what he would do next would render all his previous machinations appear as mere child's play. For he had not merely discovered Frederick Vance's old will, he had discovered something else, something that would compel everyone to choose between justice and mercy, between love and duty. And this time, there would be no turning back. Damien Vance stood cornered in the hospital room, but the enigmatic smile never entirely vanished from his face. With deliberate slowness, he extracted a USB drive from his pocket. You are aware of what this contains? He queried, dangling it like a tantalizing bait. Every sordid deal father ever executed, every bribe, every meticulously orchestrated cover-up, every skeleton meticulously hidden within the family closet, including some matters concerning mother that would irrevocably shatter poor Julian's heart. Julian stepped forward, his fists clenching at his sides. You are lying. Am I? Damien's eyes glittered with a malevolent triumph. Did you ever ponder why mother truly departed? Why she abandoned her precious sons? Father did not merely engage in affairs, little brother, he lived an entirely secret life, and mother unearthed something so abominable concerning his business dealings that she could not bear to continue living with herself. Lena felt Julian's hand tighten imperceptibly in hers. She understood how profoundly he had idolized his mother, Evelyn, who had mysteriously disappeared when he was 15. Here is my proposition, Damien continued, his voice calm and insidious. Allow me to depart with a generous settlement, of course, and all these profound secrets remain buried. Attempt to prosecute me, and I shall release everything. The Vance name will be irrevocably ruined forever. Justice Alastair Thorne stepped forward, his aged face stern. You would destroy your own family's legacy? Family? Damien laughed bitterly, a harsh, discordant sound. Gaze around this room, a cleaning lady, a secret half-brother, an old judge who aided father in concealing his deceit. Some legacy. But he had gravely miscalculated. For at that precise moment, Clara Petrov opened her eyes in the hospital bed. Lena, she called weakly, her voice thin but clear, is that Richard's boy? Everyone turned. Clara was looking directly at Damien with a gentle, almost compassionate smile. I recall when you were small, she said softly, her voice filled with a distant memory, you used to visit the hospital with your father. Such a sad little boy, always striving to capture his attention. Damien's composure utterly cracked. Shut up. You know nothing about me. You would draw pictures for the sick children, Clara continued, her voice unwavering. Your father was so profoundly proud. He kept every single one. He did not. Damien's voice rose, edged with desperation. He never cared about anything I did. Second drawer of his desk, Justice Thorne stated quietly, his voice firm, behind the false back. Every drawing, every school report, every newspaper clipping about you. He called it his Damien box. The USB drive trembled in Damien's hand. You are lying. He always loved Julian best. No, came a new voice. Beatrice walked in, holding an old leather journal. Your father's private diary. Listen to this. She opened the journal and began to read aloud, her voice clear, Damien endeavors so profoundly to prove himself, to be what he believes I desire. If only he could perceive that I am proud of him just as he intrinsically is. Tears welled in Damien's eyes, glistening betrayingly. Then why? Why did he entrust everyone else with his secrets? Why not me? Because you were too much like him, Clara said gently, her gaze filled with understanding, so terrified of exhibiting weakness, of allowing people in. He desired a better path for you. Damien's legs buckled beneath him, he sank into a chair, the USB drive falling from his limp fingers. Lena retrieved it, but instead of handing it to Julian or the awaiting police, she held it out to Damien. Your father's secrets died with him, she said softly, her voice compassionate. These are yours now. To keep or to destroy. Your choice. Damien stared at her, then at his brother. Why would you trust me with this? Because, Julian said, his voice firm and unwavering, you are still my brother. And father was correct, there are matters far more important than wealth or power. Slowly, Damien took the drive. With shaking hands, he snapped it in half. I am sorry, he whispered, his voice barely audible, for everything. But the poignant moment was abruptly interrupted by urgent shouts emanating from the hallway. Victor Thorne had escaped custody, and he had absconded with something from his office before the police arrived, proof of an even grander scandal, one that could utterly obliterate not just the Fiancé's but hundreds of innocent families. He is heading to the press, an officer reported, his voice urgent. If those documents surface. Julian and Damien looked at each other, years of bitter rivalry dissolving in the face of a common enemy. The old tunnel entrance, Damien said, his voice suddenly sharp, from when the building was a newspaper office. Thorn does not know about it. Julian nodded, a swift, understanding glance. We can intercept him before he reaches the media center. I am accompanying you too. Leo stepped forward, his resolve firm. That is what family does. As the three brothers rushed out, Lena perceived a palpable shift in the air. The storm that had relentlessly battered their lives was finally beginning to break. But in its wake, something new was burgeoning, something infinitely stronger than secrets or lies or old, festering wounds. Clara reached for her daughter's hand. Your father would be profoundly proud, she said softly. Frederick always asserted that love was the most enduring investment. Lena watched through the window as Julian, Damien, and Leo drove away together. But will it be enough? She whispered, a gnawing uncertainty in her heart. Because Victor Thorn was not merely fleeing with documents, he was fleeing with a truth so explosive it could tear apart not just the Vance family, but the entire city. And time was rapidly running out. Rain relentlessly pounded the streets of Chicago as three vehicles raced through the night. In the first, Julian gripped the steering wheel, his mind racing faster than the accelerating car. In the second, Damien deftly navigated the labyrinthine back streets he had meticulously learned during years of clandestine dealings. And in the third, Leo drove with the practiced skill of someone who had traversed these very streets his entire existence. Their target. Victor Thorn, speeding inexorably toward the media center with documents that possessed the power to utterly demolish everything. He is turning onto Michigan Avenue. Damien's voice crackled through their comms, urgent and precise. The tunnel entrance is 2 blocks ahead. But Thorn was not alone. A sleek black car pulled up beside him. It was Isabelle Dubois, making one last, desperate grab for power and cold revenge. Back at the hospital, Lena paced nervously, a knot of dread tightening in her stomach. Beatrice burst in, her tablet displaying real-time traffic camera feeds. They have him trapped, she reported, her voice hushed. But Isabelle is there too. Clara reached for her daughter's hand, her touch gentle and reassuring. Go, she said softly, her eyes filled with an unspoken understanding. They require you. Lena hesitated, her gaze fixed on her mother. Mom, I have spent my life assisting others in finding their way. Clara smiled, a profound wisdom in her eyes. Now, it is your turn. Across town, Thorn and Isabelle reached the media center's underground parking garage. But as they rushed toward the elevator, they found their path abruptly blocked. It is over, Victor, Julian stated, stepping out of the shadows, his voice resonating with authority. Damien and Leo flanked him, their presence formidable. Thorn laughed, a harsh, derisive sound. 3 brothers united. How touching. But too late. He held up a thick folder, the papers rustling. One call to my contact upstairs, and every sordid secret your father buried comes out. Including the true reason he founded Vance Innovations. We know about the stolen technology, Damien said, his voice cold. Stolen. Thorn's laugh transformed into a cruel, mocking cackle. Oh, no, much worse. Your father built his company on blood money. Illegal rare material trade, mob connections, all meticulously laundered through that first tech startup. Julian felt the world spin on its axis, a profound dizziness engulfing him. You are lying. Am I? Thorn challenged, his gaze unwavering. Ask your brother. Ask Justice Thorn. They all knew. Why do you believe your mother truly departed? Isabelle stepped forward, her designer heels clicking ominously on the concrete. Just give us what we desire, Julian. A fair share of the company, or everything burns. But another voice, clear and unwavering, rang out. No more lies. Everyone turned. Lena stood there, holding an old leather journal, Frederick Vance's authentic diary. Beatrice found this in your office, Victor, behind the wall safe, her voice was steady, imbued with quiet conviction. You have been blackmailing the Vance family for years, but you never read the last entry. She opened the journal and began to read aloud, her voice resonating with newfound strength. Today, I finally possess the irrefutable proof to end Davis's hold on us. The blood money was his all along, meticulously laundered through shell companies. He has been threatening to expose his own heinous crimes, allowing my family to shoulder the blame. But no more. Evelyn, my love, if you ever read this, I did not establish that startup with mob money. I was meticulously working with the FBI to expose Thorne's operation. That is why you had to depart, to remain safe until we could prove everything. Julian stared at the journal, a profound realization dawning. Mother was protected in witness protection. Lena nodded. Beatrice found her, Julian. She is alive, safe, waiting to return home. Thorne lunged desperately for the journal, but Leo deftly intercepted him, his grip firm. Isabel attempted to flee, but Damien blocked her path, a grim satisfaction in his eyes. You know what I learned from being a construction worker? Leo said, holding Thorne down with surprising strength. Sometimes, you must tear everything down to build something infinitely stronger. Police sirens wailed outside, their mournful cries piercing the night. Detective Ben Carter led a team into the garage. Victor Thorne, he announced, his voice authoritative, you are under arrest for extortion, blackmail, and conspiracy. Ms. Dubois, you will be joining him. As they led Thorne and Isabel away, Julian turned to Lena. How did you know to look behind the safe? Because your father left a clue, she smiled, a radiant, gentle smile. In the story he used to recount to my mother about a girl who discovered a garden behind a wall. I remembered you mentioning the same story last week. Damien stepped forward, his face heavy with profound shame. All these years, I believed father was corrupt. That is why I became so bitter, so hungry for power, to prove I could do better. He was protecting all of us, Julian realized, a newfound understanding in his eyes, even when we did not know it. Rain still fell outside, but softer now, cleansing. 4 months later, the Vance Innovations building gleamed majestically in the spring sunshine. Inside, changes were evident everywhere. Damien now headed the new security division, utilizing his profound knowledge of corporate darkness to bring light and transparency. Leo ran the Vance Benevolent Trust, tirelessly assisting families in need, commencing with his daughter's crucial medical care. And in the CEO's office, Julian sat with Lena, meticulously planning their wedding, a simple, intimate ceremony in the hospital garden where they had first encountered each other. Clara would walk her daughter down the aisle, her steps firm and proud. And in the front row, Evelyn Vance would finally behold her sons, united at last. You know what I realized? Julian said, holding Lena close, his gaze tender. All those years running a tech company, I never truly comprehended my father's greatest innovation. What was that? Lena whispered, her eyes shining. Understanding that true power is not found in computers or wealth or hidden secrets. It is found in here. He gently touched his heart. In love. In family. In trust. Lena smiled, a profound, knowing smile. Your father knew something else too. What? That sometimes, the greatest love stories do not commence with a prince and a princess. Sometimes, they commence with a millionaire and a cleaning lady who were brave enough to perceive past the superficial surface, to what truly matters. Outside the window, Chicago, Illinois, sparkled with endless possibility. In the Vance Innovations lobby, a new plaque hung proudly beside Frederick Vance's portrait. Success isn't measured in dollars, but in lives touched and hearts changed. And in the hospital where it all began, a garden bloomed where there used to be just barren concrete, a sacred place where individuals from all walks of life could find healing, profound hope, and perhaps even enduring love. Because in the end, that is what the Vance legacy became. Not a mere narrative of power or wealth or vengeful retribution, but a powerful, resonating reminder that true love sees past every mask, meticulously heals every wound, and constructs unbreakable bridges across every chasm of divide. All it requires is the profound courage to open one's heart and allow the light to permeate. Should this extraordinary journey resonate with your spirit, consider sharing your thoughts below, liking this story, and following for more narratives that defy expectation. Don't forget to subscribe for our next adventure.